Good evening, I'm Marty Olson, and welcome to another edition of City Focus. And we're live tonight, as we are just about every week. And tonight I'm delighted to have as a guest Richard Waselik, who is the president of AFSCME Local 1378 of Council 4, which represents the New London Public Works Union. And Richard has been with the city for over 13 years as a dispatcher, and he works out of the New London Police Department. I'll let him expand on some of the duties and responsibilities that he has. He's also worked as a dispatcher in East Lyme and Montville. He's a firefighter, EMT in Mystic and in Waterford. And he has worked his way up through the ranks here in New London as a steward, chief steward, and now president of his bargaining unit. I want to welcome you aboard.
Thank you.
And again, I'd like to mention that we're live, and as always, when we are live, we are able to take phone calls. So if you'd like to contribute to the program, offer some input, have questions, comments, please feel free to call in. The numbers are on the screen. Locally, we're at 860-440-3154, or if you're out of the local calling area, you can reach us at 800-253-2285. Also, before we get too far into this, I'd like to mention that in the control room tonight we have Azel Morales, who's an 8th grade student in the Isaac School, and he's representing the Drop-In Learning Center. And Azel has been coming out to the studio for the past month on a pretty regular basis, working cameras in the control room and trying to get a little experience in the field. And welcome aboard, Azel. Before we got on the air tonight, I was chatting with you, and one of the things I think there's a misconception about who is the Public Works Union. We know Public Works workers, but right. Public Works workers and the folks in your bargaining unit aren't necessarily all one and the same. So why don't you kind of expand on that?
We have clerical workers that work at City Hall, across the street at the Finance Building, Office of Development and Planning, the Building Department, the Police Department, dispatchers, clerical, animal control officers, fire department clerical staff.
The animal control officers are in your bargaining unit?
Believe it or not, yes.
Wow, I thought, and they're in the PD, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, their management is out of the PD, right? And we also have a secretary or two out in the Martin Center.
Anybody in the fire department? I mean, is the administrative assistant for the chief, is that in your unit, or is that an MAU?
No, that's our unit. Yep. And another secretary in the fire department as well.
So almost every department in the city, you have members.
Correct.
So that's rather intricate, and the functions are far and wide.
Well, it's not easy keeping track of who's where, what's doing, yeah.
Can you kind of give us a little bit of an overview of some of the functions and services provided, and the duties and responsibilities? Well, let's start with you as union president.
Okay.
And also as in your regular day job of as a dispatcher, and as well as the folks that you represent in your bargaining unit. So let's do that.
Okay. Well, myself as a president, I'm responsible for the union itself, keeping track of what's going on, trying to keep in with the politicians, trying to get a feel of what's going on, explain to them what's really going on, as well as the public, like we're doing tonight. We do a lot of administrative duties, as far as grievances, policing the contract, etc. We have a vice president, executive board, like the secretary, treasurer, and a few miscellaneous people throughout the city that are a member of the executive board.
So you're not just a one-armed paper hanger out there?
No, actually, it's just like a regular government. I really am. I don't make a lot of the decisions, believe it or not. It's the executive board and the membership. So.
Now, when a contract comes up for negotiation, do you negotiate that yourself, or do you have professionals that are retained to do that on your behalf?
Well, it's 3 selected people from our union. The president, you're normally involved, vice president, and then member of the executive board or anybody else in the union that's a member. And we also may have a staff rep from Council 4 that'll come down and assist with that. So.
Okay. Now, what about the folks in your unit? I mean, like you mentioned we can kind of go almost department from department. Let's start with Public Works, since it's the Public Works Union.
Okay.
Because Public Works has got many functions. You know, they've got building maintenance and repairs. Is there any members of your union that are in that particular? All of them are. So carpenters, painters, custodians,
Electricians.
things of that nature. Solid waste.
Yep.
What about in the water and water pollution control?
No, they're actually contracted.
With Veolia?
Yes.
And the city staff, then that is management then?
Just the secretary and the director, I believe, yeah.
So, but neither of them are in your unit?
No, actually, they used to be. They were, what do you want to call it, privatized? Out to Veolia.
Okay.
I think it was somebody else before my time. But
Yep, yeah, there's been a couple of
companies. Yeah. Earth Tech, I think, was one of them.
What about the recreation department?
Park and Rec. The guys that do the fields, cut the grass are. The senior citizen van driver should be 2, but there's 1 and a part-timer. We're working on that, is also a member of our bargaining unit. The administrative assistant secretary is a member of our bargaining unit as well.
For the Park and Rec or in the senior center, you mentioned the driver for the senior center.
Right, yeah. And I think the secretary of the senior center and Park and Rec are
okay, and what about in the fire and police?
just the secretaries. They have their own union for fire and police. Police is actually Council 15. So legally they have to be separated, 2 separate bargaining units. And then the fire department has a separate one, the IFF, the International Association of Firefighters.
Yep. So in the PD, the dispatchers are in your bargaining unit, and the
Correct.
secretaries that work in the building are also in your bargaining unit.
Correct? Yep.
Secretary of the appropriate term or administrative assistant, a more current...
We have if you want to call it, the job is considered secretary title. Administrative assistant is probably a more politically correct way. And then there's also the assistant to the police chief, and then there's another administrative assistant that works out of the detective bureau. There are 3 or 4 clerks in the police department that work out of the records division, and then there's also the dispatchers. There's 8 of us. And
8 dispatchers. And I'd just like to get an overview of what dispatch does, because you were just talking a little bit beforehand, and
It's easy to say,
you work out of the police department, but
Right.
your scope of services are well beyond that.
Yes.
So why don't you kind of articulate what you guys do?
Well, we answer the emergency 911 lines, the routine lines for the police department. We dispatch police officers after we decipher what the service needs to be. We used to dispatch the fire services if that's what they need, ambulance. At night, Public Works, we'll call them out. Tire needs to be changed on a city vehicle, fire truck breaks down, something like that. Animal control complaints, we actually enter and cancel all the warrants, missing people reports, stolen car reports. We basically do research for the police officers and the shift commander if they need it, and the street supervisor. Well, geez, you name it, we probably fix it.
Okay, and how is with the dispatch in particular, do you guys work a regular 8-hour shift, or are you guys working 12 hours, split shifts, weekends, holidays? How does...
All the above. We change every 56 days. So right now I'm on day shift, Monday through Friday. Friday's a 12-hour shift. Tomorrow I'm not going home, I'm working 16 hours.
Thank you for coming in.
Then there's also a split shift with Monday off, Tuesday, Wednesday we work midnights, get out at 7 in the morning on Thursday morning, go back in at 3 in the afternoon, get out at 11 at night, and you'll have Friday off and you work Saturday and Sunday day shift. There's times we go in, we don't know if we're going home. We'll work holidays, birthdays, funeral days, whatever.
Yeah. Now, if you're in the middle of a call and it's time for a shift change, do you just pick up and go, or do you work through the call?
Depends on what it is. If it's a serious enough call, then the shift commander may tell you you're not going home. But the information was passed from dispatcher to dispatcher because of the computer-aided dispatching. There's a system in which we'll put the emergency call in, and then the information gets typed into the call, and it keeps track of everything that's going on. So I can come in, and if there's a call, say a big fire that's been going on since 7 in the morning, we just come in and keep going from there.
Now, there has been discussions, and I don't believe that they've gotten beyond that level, and correct me if I'm wrong, for consideration of consolidation of services, dispatch in particular,
Regionalization.
with Waterford. Could you give me an overview of where that stands right now? And I can't imagine the city can just do that. That would have to be negotiated, or
It's supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, keyword is supposed to be. Technically, by law, and all the dispatchers, I'll be honest with you, are not 100% against it. Mainly because we know it's going to happen no matter what eventually. By law, by state statute, eventually it's going to have to happen. Otherwise, the cities and towns, or basically the state says, and the federal government say, you're not doing what you're supposed to, regionalizing, we're taking all your funding away.
Well, that funding, it's hard to do your job.
Right. So basically, we're in the research stage right now. I went in and I told the mayor's office, listen, East Lyme did it the wrong way. They tried to shove it down the dispatcher's throats. They're a bargaining unit. Why don't we get along? Everybody will sit together, talk about this, try and work it out. Do it the right way. And so far, it's been taking that process. Right now, we've basically come down to the end of the study, I believe, and the powers that be will make a answer on the study, and they'll decide from there whether or not it's worth moving on to further it down the road.
Now, is the Waterford dispatch, are they any bargaining unit or no?
No.
Does that hinder
It hinders them.
hinders them, not you?
Technically, yes. But we're trying to work with them. We sat down with East Lyme and Waterford. East Lyme and us sat down, and we decided that we'll go over to Waterford, talk to their dispatchers, bring them in, talk with them, and form a little committee ourselves, figure out what works best for the employees, and then make a proposal to the cities that this is what we feel was best for us. So.
Folks, again, I'd like to just remind you, you're watching City Focus, and I'm Marty Olson, and my guest tonight is Richard Waselik, who's the president of the New London Public Works Union, which is the AFSCME Local 1378. And we're live, and if you'd like to give us a call and contribute to the program, please do. The numbers are on the screen, and you can reach us locally at 860-440-3154. Or if you're out there and you'd like to participate, please do it, 800-253-2285. With a bargaining unit, you're working under a contract. When does your current contract expire?
In July of 2014.
So that's a little over a year.
But we'll start negotiating before that.
I would hope so.
Oh, definitely.
What time frame? I mean, a year out, 6 months out? And who kicks that off? Is that kicked off by you, or does a representative from the city, give you a buzz and say, well, it's that time?
Well, we're supposed to send a letter in to say, hey, this is, we want to sit down and go over the contract again. If a contract expires, the contract necessarily doesn't stop. It keeps going until it's renegotiated. The last contract went to arbitration, and the arbitrator was not unfair. I'll say it that way. It was not unfair. We lost some, we gained a little bit. So.
Now, are you under a binding arbitration if a contract goes to that route?
Yes.
So that precludes you then from striking, is that correct?
It's against the law for us to strike. The municipalities are not allowed to strike. It's actually in our contract as well.
Okay, I think that's important for the public to understand. Yeah. I mean, but the trade-off for that years ago was binding arbitration. You will go this route, and
that's exactly what the trade-off was. If you're not allowed to strike, but something was not working out, you guys can't come to an agreement, you go to arbitration. Which is why a lot of states now, they're losing their bargaining rights because their rights are being taken away by the governors and the legislation. Which, it's not really fair for them because now you're losing your services as well, because now the city can come in and say, like they're trying to do in New London a little bit, you're no longer going to need trash collection. You can't fight it either. You lost your contracts, you lost your pension, which happened in Rhode Island. You no longer have, I'm sorry, you're retired, you worked 30, 40 years, you put in your pension, and tomorrow you don't have it anymore, sorry.
Yeah, and that also goes to what we were discussing earlier, because the highway divisions, I would suspect in Public Works, many, if not all of those guys are in your unit.
All of them.
All of them. Mm-hmm. And what about the city shop where they do the repairs to the rolling stock?
All of them.
All of them. I'm trying to think if I've missed any of the...
like I said, Park and Recs, the guys that do the mowing. Sanitation, which solid waste, the transfer station. Painters, sign man, mechanical maintenance, the guys that fix the trucks.
Yeah, that's when you said the city shop, mechanical maintenance.
Okay. And yeah, the highway guys that do the plowing. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize, they're saying, well, we'll lay off 2 garbage guys. If this budget, we'll cut the budget in Public Works, you're going to lose 2 garbage guys. Well, guess what? Your garbage guys are also the ones that plow your streets. Right? Everybody complains that streets aren't plowed. Well, the departments have been.
So there is an impact. And I can tell you from personal experience, this past Friday, and actually it's been over the last number of months, but this past Friday in particular, I live on Ocean Avenue down the south end of the city, and Friday is recycling garbage pickup day, and our garbage and recycling was not picked up. And I happened to have an opportunity to see the mayor on Sunday at Riverside Park, and within the context of our broad conversation, I did mention to him that the garbage was not picked up, and he thought that was kind of cute. My neighbors and I weren't exactly find it quite as amusing as he did. And I happened to notice too that the recycling truck was on Penny Lane today, which is 2 days plus the weekend.
Well, they cut the budget, no more overtime. Guys take a couple of days off, they're already bare bones. Guys take a day off, you're down. You got to play catch up the rest of the week.
Yeah. Now, one thing, I'm not sure if this is still in place, but with the solid waste division, at one time it used to be when the guys came in, if they got through with their route prior to their 8-hour or 7.5-hour shift, they were able to go home. So if they got through at 2, they'd bring the trucks in and they'd go home, or they get home at 3 or whatever it may be. Is that still in place?
It's in the contract, but what the contract says is if the supervisors feel the work is done, they can go home. Now, with some, and I want to go into.
And the reason I bring this up is that if they are unable to get their work done and there's no overtime, and for years guys would get. I mean, that was an incentive to get your job done.
That's the title of the clause, the incentive. Actually, believe it or not. Now they're not going home now at 2 o'clock. And part of the problem was that stems from, and I can't go into too much detail because of privacy and grievances and stuff for people, but some members are taking that as, well, you told the supervisor you didn't like that, we filed the grievance, now no one's allowed to go home at 2 o'clock. Even if the work is done. We'll find something for them to do somewhere else. Right now, obviously, they've been having to finish up all the work anyway, so the incentive is pretty much gone. Looks like we got a phone call?
It looks like we got a call, so we'll go right to the phones. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Good evening, Marty.
Good evening.
Mr. President.
Hello.
In the 19 years I worked for the city as a department head, I had one grievance with Public Works Union, and I was very pleased because I thought that was a pretty good record. And I was called up to personnel on this particular grievance, and it was explained to me, and I said, the work is right. That was a violation, and they must fall off their chairs. What? You can't. No, you got to be. You can't be in favor of the union. I said the union's right. That was the one and only. That was the one and only grievance I ever had, and it was settled rather quickly. But I got a call. I don't care how long you haven't been working with the city on a full-time basis. Anyway, I got a call last night from a citizen. Why did they call me? I mean. But if they know you ever work you're going to get a call. I got a call, and they were talking about the garbage and the recycle wasn't picked up, and this was down near Pequot Avenue, and I So, you know, what are you calling me for? What do I know about this? Well, why wasn't it picked up? I said, maybe they ran out of time. Maybe we ran out of money. Well, that can't happen. It's got to be picked up. You can't just stop. Yes, you can. You know, and I think this is what a lot of people have to realize. You've got some very hard-working public works employees in this city. They're really the guys you've got to rely on, and they're the people who have done what. And I'm not kidding. They're very hard-working people.
Well, it's funny. I used to work in the East Lyme Highway Department myself, and before I just came to New London as a dispatcher, and I jumped at the chance. I said, no more working in the snow, no more working in the rain. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
I'll be there in a minute. So.
Right. Now you're still working in the storm, though.
Oh, yeah, different kind of storm, yeah. I can't say it on the air, though.
Well, I don't care if you pick up my recycle or not one day, Monday, Tuesday, I don't care. It'll wait for you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for calling. I appreciate that. And our call is a regular participant most weeks.
Excellent.
And we're back on the phones in line 2. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi, I've got a question. It's a generic question. When they pull the Public Works garbage unit off the road, do they give them a reason as to why they're doing it?
Well, because they're not going to work overtime.
Well, if the route starts at 7 in the morning, how can that be overtime?
No, that's straight time.
If they start at 7, when does their day end?
Oh, about 3:30, 4 o'clock. I work 7 to 3. I think they start 7:30 or 8 o'clock to 4, something like that.
So at 4 o'clock, they're back in the shop and they're done for
Back
the
in
day.
the shop, going home.
Well, I did talk to the mayor on Sunday. He indicated to me that there is no overtime, and when their shift is over, they're done. And if their work's not done, it's not done.
Yep.
Well, the reason
I'm not saying I agree with that.
I'm asking this question is that last Friday, we're at the beginning of the route. There was no garbage pickup that day at all. And we're just curious as to why.
You'd have to ask the supervisor, ma'am. I honestly have no idea. Yeah.
And do you know who the supervisor is in that
That
area?
would be Tim Hanser is the
He's the director.
director of the department, and there's also what's his name? Barry Watkins, who is the direct supervisor to the sanitation department.
Well, caller, do you think it might be worthwhile to have a call to one or both of those gentlemen?
I certainly do, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for the call. Well, I don't necessarily think that some of us were getting responses we'd like on that one, but we'll persevere. We have the call. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Hi, Marty.
Hello. Can I help
How are
you?
you?
I'm sorry, you have a comment, question for us tonight?
Yes, I do. I brought that up at the council meeting last night about the garbage,
Yes.
and I said we were supposed to get picked up on Friday. It didn't get picked up on Monday, and I said they're lucky it was the south end of the city because the middle of the city has duplexes, triple apartment houses with a lot of debris outside. And where we had rain and so on and so forth, we would have had quite a mess in the city. And I called someone, and I won't reveal the names, told me that there was two garbage men out on vacation. One called in sick, and one was suspended. And that's why the garbage didn't get picked up. Whether that be truth or not,
Yes, it is.
I brought it up at the council, and the mayor happened to be there to talk about the budget, and he answered my question, and it was a little bit around the, I don't know, in a circle. He said, naturally, no overtime. We have GPSs in trucks. That wasn't the issue. Nobody was accusing anybody of not doing their job. But is this a thing we're going to have for the whole summer?
Well,
We're not going to have any, look at the grass around town. We're not going to have, they're not hiring any summer help.
Well, we certainly have got, I think, some issues to discuss. I mean, we've got, well, I guess our final reading of the budgets this evening. I'm not sure if there'll be a budget referendum, if there'll be a petition drive. Some of the issues I'd like to discuss with my guest tonight would be the ability of his bargaining unit to do their job. I mean, do they have enough personnel in place to effectively do the job? And if there's nobody working on the trucks, they certainly aren't going to pick up our recycling and our garbage.
Well, a little bit of history about Public Works is the department right now is already down 60% from what it used to be. So now you want to take the department that's down that percentage and then take them down even more. So that's what happens when you cut. It's all these services that people suddenly realize they really need, and that's why they need to be funded.
Well, I just want to say this. The council doesn't say this is the people we're going to cut. That's up to the mayor's office. And I don't get it, because they always target Public Works, the people that do the work. And this is not anything new this year, but it's worse than ever.
Right.
And I don't think it's right. Cut from the top. Let them do without, and let the people get their services for what they pay their taxes for.
Well, a little funny story on that was before I was involved in the union as I am now, when the last maybe 1 or 2 contract negotiations ago, the Public Works Union gave back a lot. We gave furlough days, basically we went home, didn't work, didn't get paid for it. We gave up raises, they raised our medical insurance because they said, well, we can't find, there's $3 million deficit. Well, then all of a sudden we gave all this up, and then they found the money. And then they gave the directors of each department bonuses, but depending on how much money they saved in each department by not hiring the overtime and so forth. So.
Well, it's certainly a challenging situation because there is a demand for services in the city, be it in Public Works, police, fire, recreation, senior center, and one of the things that I found discouraging at the beginning of the budget process was the budget that the mayor presented to council, which basically had nothing more than rather large departmental cuts with no definition, just $500,000 in Public Works.
What they did was they told each department head, cut this much out of your budget, and then it was up to the department head to decide where it had to be cut.
Well, this is what was presented to the council,
right,
and leaving it to the council to have to make those decisions. Now, my point is that a leader, a leader's job, it helps to define where we're going, is through the budget. The budget will, the people know what's important. We're going to fund the police department. We're going to add firemen. We're going to get new snow plows, or whatever it may be. Every department was getting whacked. Well, the only areas that did not get whacked in the mayor's budget are the people that he hired.
Right.
Chief of staff, his administrative assistant, special assistant, whatever you want to call Zach, Ms. Doherty, who's now elevated to ODP, the Public Works Director. These are direct appointments of the mayor. They seem to be sacrosanct, and everybody else is kind of like open game. And that doesn't do much to build morale either.
Like I tried to say at the council meeting that one night is, you keep cutting Public Works, you keep cutting the fire department, you keep cutting the police department, who's going to want to come to New London? You have a city with garbage all over the place, places not being mowed, what businesses, what people are going to want to come? You have drunks walking around the streets because you bring all these homeless places in, and you want to keep bringing all these places that don't pay taxes and all these other things. The place is going to fall apart. Who's going to want to come to New London? You couldn't cut a fire station in the center of a city. Well, you're lucky that a firehouse wasn't cut the other morning during Moore Avenue when I was dispatching, because the only reason those people are alive is because the firehouse was a minute way down the road.
Well, not up at the communication center, it goes into the fire headquarters on Bank. I mean,
well, all the radios are running through there, right?
And you just can't.
Cops, you're going to cut all these cops. People running up and down the road with weapons. Who's going to want to move to New London?
Yeah. No. Okay, I've got the call. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Hi, Marty and Richard. It's Karen from the Senior Center.
Yes, how are you?
I'm great. I had a couple of questions. Well, actually 3.
Okay.
The GPS units on the garbage trucks, how much did those cost us?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head. Do you have any idea? I'd have to check.
I honestly have no
I
idea,
mean, they
but I
can pay for those, but they can't pay for, finishing the garbage pickup?
Well, based upon what was discussed earlier, I don't know if you've heard all the calls, but it appears that on Friday, there was no garbage pickup for a multitude of reasons. There were no trucks out, so the GPS was irrelevant if the trucks aren't moving.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, believe it or not, there's a lot of city vehicles that also have GPS on them. Fire trucks, police cars all have GPS on them.
I think that's interesting, anyway.
Okay, we'll check into how much that cost. Question number 2.
So, question number 2. Richard, a few minutes ago, mentioned that at the senior center we have one full-time driver and a part-time driver that they're working on. And I wondered if he could maybe expound on that.
What we're working on is they want to lay off 2 people out of finance, and there's also more guys that were laid off. What we're looking at doing is and there's nothing against part-timers. I have part-time jobs, but we also have other people that lost their jobs, full-time jobs. And we want to bring those people in and actually bring them in and give them another job by putting them in the senior citizen van position.
So this would be the concept of bumping.
Correct.
Yeah, right. You do know that the one full-time driver that we have took out of his own pocket to pay for the expense of going to school to get his license so he could drive the bus.
Yep.
And then the city's response to that was to cut his hours. So he had to go out and get another part-time job. My third, it's not necessarily a question, but just an observation. Last night when the mayor was speaking, he said something about there wouldn't be any layoffs until at least halfway into the fiscal year.
For police.
So does that mean he's going to wait to see if his slate of officers, of councilmen gets elected and Christmas time, and then he's going to start laying off?
Well, I will defer to my guest. He seems to be more informed on this than I am.
We were talking about this today. What I was actually referring to was police officers only. Right now, they're looking at about 10 layoffs for police, and because the police chief is saying she doesn't have the money to fund their positions. So what he's saying is because there's so many officers that no longer feel that it's comfortable working in London anymore, if you will, or possibly looking at other aspects of employment. So what they're actually saying is, well, now we may be able to fund them for another 6 months, depending on what happens, how many people.
Yeah.
And then also the money came from the Board of Ed to fund those 6
I
months.
just find it a little curious.
Well, I think that's certainly a legitimate question, and I'll follow up on that. And when I get a chance, I will drop into the center, and we can compare notes.
That would be great, Marty.
Thank
and
you.
You too. You're invited anytime. You know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for calling tonight.
You're welcome.
You bet. Let's get into this bumping, because we do have the 2 employees.
Yes.
That the finance was kind of abruptly
Well, that's what
terminated or separated.
It goes to what I was saying earlier, where we went on the air then. The Director of Public Works did it the way it's supposed to be done. He said, hey, called us in, said, hey, this is myself and the Vice President and the Chief Steward. This is what the city wants cut. This is how much money we're going to have to cut. This is what will happen if it gets cut. These are the positions that will be cut. They don't name names because it's nothing about people, it's positions.
And that makes sense.
So we knew ahead of time. Now, after we worked all that and we did our little, thing with the city council and stuff, finance director calls those 2 people in, which was not even supposed to be allowed. They were supposed to have union representation. They were denied that. And then also giving these letters saying, hey, by the way, by July 1st, you won't have a job. We're cutting your position. Now, what does that do to the people? It's just unethical. Not even talking about business, it's unethical.
Well, let me ask you a question. A couple of questions. One is, I'm assuming that a grievance has been filed. Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Two.
Two. One for each person.
Yes.
But while that process is going through, in an effort to protect those employees, and one of them has got a very long tenure with the city.
Yes, both of them, actually.
And another, I know, had bumped into her current position.
Both of them, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so
And one of them within the last year. So now how does she feel? This is the second time.
are they being targeted? Is there some sort of...
There's some mention of that. I'll be honest, I have not been given any substantial proof of that. But if it does come to light and be, there will be some action taken on that, yes.
Yeah. So talk about bumping. I mean, what is it? How does it work?
But basically what happens is they were given their letters that as of July 1st, their positions are cut. So now looking at their grade levels, we look compared to the list of employees, what their grade levels are, seniority, and what their job is. So there's about 3 different aspects that play into bumping, and all those 3 aspects have to be compared to the employee they're looking at. Not employee, but position, and then that position will then be taken by that person, and then it will go down from there to other positions. So basically, right now, everybody in public works that's in any type of what you consider white-collar work is worried that they're going to lose their job. So,
And seniority does play a role in that.
major role.
Major role. Now, how about the capacity to transfer and do a particular job? I mean, let's say I'm in your bargaining unit and I'm a clerk in a particular office, and you lose your job. You're being...
As a dispatcher?
As a dispatcher, it's called a dispatcher position. Sure. It's being cut. Or that person being cut, could that person go over and do your job?
No.
So it's not purely a lateral within the union. You've got to have some semblance of skill to do the job.
It's seniority, skill, and seniority. Seniority, skill, and grade level.
Okay.
What the job is considered grade-wise. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a couple of calls here, so let's go back to the phones here. I love this tonight. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
When you start talking about bumping, I had a few experiences with bumping in my 19, 20 years, and I got to say most of them did not work out. One was wonderful. And I fought that last one because I said, I'm not going to do this again. I don't even know who the person is. You want to bump this person. And we went around and around and around. And finally they said who it was. I said, oh, that's good. Okay. But, you know, I'm just taking the city clerk's office, for example. It takes an employee that comes into that office. I don't care if they are a clerk typist 2 or a records technician or what they are. It takes them 6 months to a year before they can get that. It's the varied activities so different than they do in any other department. I mean, it just really takes that long, and to have somebody, you know, come in and bump somebody that's fairly new, you can lose an awful lot of time. I guess, you know, I can understand bumping, and it can work for the good, but sometimes it doesn't. In my opinion, it just never worked as well as when I first started there. We didn't even go through personnel. I hired my own people, and it was still public works employees, but sometimes I'd have a panel of people, and it worked very well. And bumping always was a bump in the road that, and no pun intended.
Oh, it's very stressful for the employees, too. Yeah.
Sometimes. But I'd like to hear more about it, and, you know, my mind is open on the subject, but it's a difficult road for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. I suspect that bumping is something that has been negotiated over the course of time, and it's in your contract. This is not something you just pulled a rabbit out of your hat.
No, it's standard practice through any bargaining unit, pretty much. So.
Okay, we got another call on too, so we'll go there. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Good evening. I called a little while ago.
Yes.
What is the union's position on a personnel that was removed from her position and then hired back very quietly as a consultant.
Bernadette?
Yep.
Our position on that? Well, let me take a breath for a minute.
Okay, take a breath.
There's a lot of issues we're having right now with that. One being the pension that she never earned and was put into our pension, and we don't know if we're losing our pension now because of it. So we're in the process of waiting for the city council to respond to us about that.
How could she be in your pension if she's not even in your bargaining unit?
Well, we don't have to necessarily be in one bargaining unit. It can be a city employee that's qualified to be in that pension. It's a defined pension. Now, you have to be tenured in order to collect the pension anywhere you go. That's standard around the country and the world, probably. She wasn't tenured, was not in our pension, took her 401, put it into our pension, and now is collecting a full pension after not even going through the process of the pension committee that's been established by city charter. So right now, she's illegally collecting a pension and now also working as a contractor for a city. And when we had a cop who put his life in danger for so many years, he was eligible to retire and was denied sweeping floors part-time.
So this would be a decision made by our mayor.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know who made that decision, but yes, somebody high above my pay grade had to make that decision, right? So.
Thank you.
Thank you for the call, and I think it's an important issue. There seems to be a fair amount of ignoring of the charter when it interferes with a good time.
And it's interesting because, I mean, anybody like the gentleman that said he worked for Public Works, if I'm not mistaken, everybody knows you do something wrong, you're called on the floor, and you're disciplined, fired, suspended. Where's the accountability for people that are running us? That's what we're looking at.
One of the things that I find a little disconcerting with some of the issues we've been discussing and some of the ones that have been brought up by many of our callers this evening is that we do have a city council, and with our new form of government, which has certainly been having its fits and starts coming together here, with a high level of, I think, unnecessary drama, is that the council is the check and balance to the administration.
Should be.
And often I think that they are not standing up and being counted on those important issues when the mayor may be overreaching and not necessarily adhering to the law of the land, which is our city charter, with our code of ordinances. And
I would imagine there would be some kind of, like you said, check and balance as to what's going on, like with our pension issue. It goes to the administrative committee. How much teeth does an administrative committee have to protect its employees? I don't know. But we're trying to find any route we can to solve this.
Well, I think in some instances the mayor will do what he does. And I'm not even sure, as the things are currently constituted, the council has the capacity to do something substantive. But if they don't even stand up and question, bring this up for discussion in the public domain.
Well,
I think that this is maybe not right. We ought to be doing things differently.
Like I said, myself as a union president, we put a letter in to the administrative committee asking them to look into this pension issue. So hopefully they're being tested now. We'll see what happens. So.
Very good. Well, we got another call here, so let's go back to the phones. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question.
Yes.
I believe that Bernadette, whatever her name is, her deal for her retirement was with Rose, the lady Rose.
Denise Rose was our last city manager.
And I believe she's the one that made up the deal for this retirement. But I've never heard of such a thing where a person works 7 years and is fully
vested?
I mean, usually you have to give at least 10.
Well, that's what the city charter says, 10 years, correct.
So I guess I'm just really surprised. I mean, it really wasn't a Daryl Finizio deal. It was a Denise Rose deal.
And if he's wrong, or at least talk to us and say that, I don't think anybody would have a hard time hearing that, but no one's answering us. That's part of the problem right now, and that's why we're trying to look into
that's
it.
the problem with everything.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. you know, I'll tell you, Bernadette was working full-time for a good half year with the transition.
Yep.
So any deal negotiated with her retirement, I would argue, was coming from the mayor. It was not with the prior council, which I sat on.
I would think so. That's not necessarily meaning when she put into the pension, but that means when she retired, so she shouldn't still not have been collecting the pension to begin with.
Yeah.
She should have been given that money and
Yeah, but the separation deal starting from the day that the mayor came up, was sworn in. He took that on himself.
Right.
And you know, with the police department, with you know, with the captains, and you know, the building official, and Keith Chapman in Public Works. I mean, there was a whole slew of people that have been pushed out.
Which would also make me question who's looking at these legal aspects and putting the city in a liability like that. That's the people they're paying 3 or 4 times our wages, an hour probably, to make these decisions. So,
well, very good. This has been really super tonight. I'm tickled with the amount of participation and the calls and the level of interest in the topic at hand here. And the calls have been fabulous tonight, and I want to thank everybody who's called in. And we do have a few more minutes left, so if you'd like to get in, you still have time. And the numbers are on the screen. This is City Focus. I'm Marty Olson, and I'm with Richard Waselik, who's the president of the New London Public Works Union, which is also the local AFSCME 1378, correct?
Correct.
All righty. And so we've been having a nice discussion on labor and its role in the city, with the public works in particular, and many different facets, and the services provided by this particular bargaining unit, and they're basically involved in every department of the city. It's not like it's Public Works is Public Works Department. It's Public Works Union, and your people are everywhere.
Run every single department.
And I think that's important to understand in terms of the services being rendered, or perhaps not, depending on your point of view within the city, and how our budget is impacting all of this. And these large budget cuts with no definition. Why is it that the little guy seems to get the ones getting hammered first? And I don't necessarily think that's appropriate.
No, I mean, people to do the work, you need them. Well, why cut them?
Okay. Well, we're getting into our last handful of minutes. Is there anything you'd like to get into, unless we're into what I call, on any topic?
Well, we have the new Senate Bill 54 that's being presented into the state legislation right now, and that's to, I'll start in the beginning. A lot of people say, well, municipal employees, they have these pensions. Why can't the public have these pensions? Which, all right, it's an honest question. Someone has to present the idea, though. So Council 4 have asked me, which Local 1378 falls under, presented this legislation and said, with a couple of legislators working on it, and said, hey, why don't we create a voluntary public pension? So anybody that's in the private sector now, if this legislation passes, which is why I'm mentioning it, because it needs the public support, you call your legislator, let them know, you'll be able to actually now contribute to a pension like municipal employees do.
Now this is something that you wrote about on New London Patch.
Yes.
So if anybody's interested in reading about Richard's thoughts, it's in print. It's in black and white, and it's on the record. So he's not hiding behind anything.
And I'm here telling you about it.
I would argue, in the private sector, there are IRAs and Roth IRAs. There are options for
not as stable
and retirement.
Well, they're not as stable, though, which is where a lot of people run into, like IRAs, 401ks. They all go with the market. These municipal funds, private voluntary pensions, if you will, public pension, will be money you put into the pension, and it's backed up by the state.
Okay, we get another call. Good evening, and you're on the air. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Murray. I'm sorry, Marty. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. It's Brian Cosgrove. Great show. Very interesting.
Thank you.
I have a question. I found it kind of interesting from demographic standpoint, the thing about the trash pickup and the recycling, it was everybody down in the 6th district that were disappointed that it doesn't happen in a timely fashion, but it's like the other parts of the city, you know, just seem to roll with it, and I think that's what everybody has to start to think about with what everyone's challenged with, a little patience. And I was going to ask if you had an update on the repairs to the dog pound, or if they're going to regionalize it. I know there's discussion of people wanting to volunteer and that there might be a union concern with that, and I'll hang up and listen to your response.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the call.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the union has actually told the city that as long as our guys, and there's also requirements, you know, insurance, et cetera, licenses, and that these companies that volunteer to do this work, the union does not have a problem with them doing the work. All we need is an agreement saying that it doesn't set precedent, which means that they can't come back later and say, well, you guys let them do this, now we don't need your job. A lot of our guys, my girlfriend included, who I mentioned, Krista, who owns Posh and Mystic, is a dog lover, animal lover. Of course, we get more birds, cats, dogs in my house than I can even. She very concerned about this as well. And I said she grew up in New London. Her parents are live in New London their whole life. And we made a deal. We told them, bring these people in. We will even bring people to help you. And we haven't heard a word back.
Yeah, well, the caller, I think, is right. I mean, there are instances from periodically where, you know, you have a volunteer effort. For instance, the playscape, the Rotary Playscape up at Toby May Field a few years ago, which was, I believe, put in with volunteer effort. And I don't recall, was there an issue regarding the bargaining unit with that?
Union signed an agreement with them, too. There's one that's going to be built in Riverside Park.
That's correct. That's hopefully going to be soon.
I signed it myself. Bring your guys in, put the playscape up, have a blast. Our guys will cut your grass.
Very good. All right, we got another call here. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Hey, Marty, Dennis from New London. Sorry for calling so late. I have a question for the gentleman you have on tonight. Do you foresee a time in the future, and I predict not that far in the future, but when the citizens of New London, the taxpayers of New London, will reach a point where they will not be able to afford to pay any more towards any unions? And do you have any idea where you think that might be?
Well, I think the question really is, are the unions being targeted as saying that they're costing the city too much money? Because the unions aren't the ones costing the city the money. Actually, believe it or not, New London employees are one of the lowest paid for their job in the whole eastern part of Connecticut. Dispatch in particular. New London Dispatch does the amount of 911 calls the whole northeastern part of the state of Connecticut does in the 7 square miles of New London. We're one of the lowest paid dispatch centers in the area besides East Lyme. So,
you know, when I hear that statement about one of the lowest paid in the area, you know, every area is different. Some areas you could be you know, it could be an area where people's income and lifestyle is much higher. You know, I'm talking about New London itself. I'm not talking about the surrounding areas, because the surrounding areas pay whatever they pay, and the people make whatever they make. How many people in your union actually live in New London?
I'll be honest with you, I don't have an exact number.
Okay, you know, my only concern is that there's union members, maybe not so much Public Works, I really like you guys, but other unions in the city, I don't even know how many unions we have in the city. I thought it was 3, I think it's more.
There's more, it's 4, I believe.
There's a lot of folks that, you know, I'm not going to begrudge them that they don't live here, but it's such a large chunk of money going out of the city every time they're paid. I hear the music, so.
Dennis, we want to thank you for the call, and we'll pick it up next week. Rich, I want to thank you for coming in. Folks, thanks for watching. I love all the calls tonight. We'll see you next week. Good night.